It's the Beth Cahill Show. And now, here's Beth.
Good morning and welcome to the Beth Cahill Show. As I am sure every listener is aware, the House voted to impeach President Donald Trump on Wednesday night on two charges: obstruction of Congress and abuse of power. Neither one an actual crime. So historically speaking, this is a monumentous vote, right? This is the biggest vote a member of Congress can ever undertake. So why does it feel like nothing significant just happened? It certainly doesn't feel like the impeachment of a sitting United States president just took place. And I'll be honest, after watching this vote on Wednesday night, I could not help but feel a little sad. Not sad because the president is going to be removed, because that's not going to happen, but sad because I feel like our country is in such a weird state of affairs right now in so many different ways. When I go back to when President Obama was in office and I think about being on the other side of things, I cannot help but think, for me personally, I did not like Obama's policies. I didn't think a lot of what he was doing was strengthening the country that I love. But I soldiered on day after day. I did not go on Twitter bashing him. I didn't tell everyone that I knew what an awful person he was. I didn't degrade his family. No, I got active. I got active in the political process. I told myself that in order to have the policies in place that I thought would make my family's life better, my neighbor's life better, our country stronger, that I was going to have to jump into the fight. So I did. I campaigned for candidates that represented my values. I donated to campaigns that I thought would make our country a better place. Friendships that I cherished took a hit. I caught a lot of flack for publicly supporting this president. But I'll tell you this much. In 2016, on election night, I felt like the time and the money and the grief over the last year had been worth it. I felt like the efforts that I had made an actual difference to my family. So on a week like this, when for only the third time in United States history, our president, a president that I fought to get elected, gets impeached in the most partisan fashion our country has ever seen, I can't help but feel disappointment. Elections have consequences. Parties are going to win and lose elections. That's just what's going to happen. It's one constant thing that we know is always going to happen. Parties are going to win and they're going to lose elections. Donald Trump will eventually not be our president. Hopefully, that's not until 2024, but eventually we're going to have another president. And what happens then? Do we just go back to business as usual? The status quo? Unfortunately, I don't believe that is possible. This is going to have lasting effects on every president to come after this president. I want to play a clip for you from Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, talking on just this.
It wasn't even the first time House Democrats have introduced articles of impeachment. It was actually the seventh time. They started less than 6 months after the president was sworn in. They tried to impeach President Trump for being impolite to the press, for being mean to professional athletes, for changing President Obama's policy on transgender people in the military. All of these things were high crimes and misdemeanors, according to Democrats. Now, this wasn't just a few people. Scores of Democrats voted to move forward with impeachment on 3 of those prior occasions. So let's be clear. The House's vote yesterday was not some neutral judgment that Democrats came to with great reluctance. It was the predetermined end of a partisan crusade that began before President Trump was even nominated, let alone sworn in. For the very first time in modern history, we've seen a political faction in Congress promise from the moment the moment a president election ended, they would find some way to overturn it. A few months ago, Democrats' 3-year-long impeachment in search of articles found its way to the subject of Ukraine. House Democrats embarked on the most rushed, least thorough, and most unfair impeachment inquiry in modern history. Chairman Schiff's inquiry was poisoned by partisanship from the outset. Its procedures and parameters were unfair in unprecedented ways. Democrats tried to make Chairman Schiff into a de facto special prosecutor, notwithstanding the fact that he is a partisan member of Congress who'd already engaged in strange and biased behavior. He scrapped the precedent to cut the Republican minority out of the process. He denied President Trump the same sorts of procedural rights that houses of both parties had provided to past presidents of both parties. President Trump's counsel could not participate in Chairman Schiff's hearings, present evidence, or cross-examine witnesses. The House Judiciary Committee's crack at this was even more ahistorical. It was like the Speaker called up Chairman Nadler and ordered one impeachment. Rush deliver it, please. The committee found no facts on its own, did nothing to verify the Schiff report. Their only witnesses were liberal law professors and congressional staffers.
So I apologize, that's a long clip, but I think he does a good job in kind of explaining from start to finish how this happened and how it's been completely partisan from the start. Impeachments cannot be a partisan exercise. It delegitimizes them. That much is clear. McConnell touches on this idea that what the House embarked on with this impeachment proceeding, it's unprecedented. It was rushed. It was partisan. And at times, it was incredibly unfair to the idea that everyone in this country, yes, including Donald Trump, gets due process. Everyone gets their day in court. I watched the entire day of this impeachment hearing, so you didn't have to. And some of what I heard was everything that America is not. I heard members of Congress talk about how Trump needs to prove his innocence. Really, that's what they said. That's what members of Congress actually said on the House floor. Prove his innocence. No, ladies and gentlemen, that's actually not how we do things in this country. No, if you want to impeach a president, any president, the responsibility lies with you, the members, to prove his guilt. And those members didn't make the case, which is why this exercise was only bipartisan when 2 to 3 Democrats voted with the Republicans. And one Democrat who's running for president, Tulsi Gabbard, voted present. She couldn't even bring herself to vote for it. Granted, she didn't vote against it either, but they didn't make the case to Tulsi either, who is running for president of the United States, to defeat Donald Trump. I want to play a clip of Tulsi on her reasoning as to why she voted present on this.
Tell us what your thought process was here. How did you come to this decision?
Oh, first of all, throughout my life, whether it was through serving in the military and in the different decisions that I've made in Congress, I always think about what's in the best interest of the country. People will agree sometimes with those decisions, may disagree with those decisions, but my motivation is always coming from a deep love of country. And that's where, after doing my due diligence and going through the exhaustive report that was put out at the conclusion of the inquiry, I came to that conclusion that I could not, in good conscience, vote either yes or no. A no vote was unacceptable to me because Donald Trump is absolutely guilty of wrongdoing. Mm-hmm. A yes vote was unacceptable to me because impeachment should never come about as a culmination of a highly partisan process. This is something that our founders warned us about, Alexander Hamilton. He wrote very clearly about how his concern that the impeachment outcome would be determined by the strength of one party or another rather than by an examination of innocence or guilt. And that's why I believe so strongly that making this statement, voting present, taking a stand for the center, standing for our democracy, and really that this decision of whether to remove Donald Trump or not must be in the hands of voters. I believe that they will make that decision. I'm running for president to defeat Donald Trump.
Imagine that. Imagine leaving it in the hands of voters. What a novel concept. There's an election in about 10 months from now, so I'd say that she might be on to something. Let's leave it up to the voters to decide whether Trump should be removed from office. So what's the House doing now? Except much of the same. I mean, the day after the House voted to impeach the President of the United States, the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, would not even take questions on impeachment from reporters. Can you even fathom that? The President of the United States was just impeached on Wednesday night by her Congress. And now Thursday morning's press conference, she doesn't want to take any questions on the topic. She doesn't think she owes an answer on the path forward to the American people. That is crazy. You impeach the president and you don't want to answer questions? It doesn't work like that. You work for us. And I think it just shows how unserious this entire process was. How truly unserious of a speaker Nancy Pelosi has become. The Republican House Minority Leader, Kevin McCarthy, had this to say on it.
I consider it a defeat in the idea that we didn't hold the same standard that the Speaker asked us to hold in March of this year, at least at that time. That impeachment was so divisive that it'd have to be overwhelming, compelling, and bipartisan. When I watched last night, the only bipartisan vote was against impeachment. A Democrat who's actually running for president voted present. So the question you probably wanted to ask was to the Speaker. Unfortunately, she would not take any questions when it came to impeachment. I would think if Nancy Pelosi thought impeachment was so important, that she had to put this before the American public, that she wrote a timeline, that she selected committee chairmen based upon in the future, that she spent 2.5 years working on this, the press conference the day after impeachment that she has weekly, I thought she would have welcomed questions about impeachment. Unfortunately, she told you they were Republican talking points and she would not take your questions. I never thought a speaker would act that way. I guess the only thing I could take from that, she's embarrassed of it. She understands how weak it is. And she understands her own criteria was not met, constitutionally was not met. She probably failed on all parts.
Yeah, I agree with McCarthy. I do believe she failed on on all parts. So if we were to look to history for what happens next, or just take a basic civics course, it would tell us that after the House impeaches, they then send the articles to the Senate for a trial. But of course, in today's political discourse, we can expect that that precedent will not be followed. And of course, this is no exception. Nancy Pelosi has decided that she will hold on to articles of impeachment until she knows what type of trial the Senate is going to have. Can someone please explain to Nancy Pelosi that she is the Speaker of the House and she has no control in the Senate? Surely she understands this. Nancy's a smart person. She understands this all too well. But this, again, it's not a serious process. She has ball control here, and she'd like to hold on to it as long as she can. Here she is speaking on this.
When we see the process that is set forth in the Senate, then we'll know the number of managers that we may have to go forward and who we would choose. That's what I said last night. That's what I'm saying now. The precedent for this, and I met with my 6 chairs after some of us were together for a press conference after the votes last night, and we discussed the precedent of it all, and that is in the most recent case taking up an impeachment, there was a proposal on the floor put together in a bipartisan way. 100 senators voted for the process on how they would go forward on the case of President Clinton. We would hope that they could come to some conclusion like that. But in any event, we're ready.
So I know it's hard to make out what she's saying here, but what I gathered from what she's saying is she's going to wait to decide how to move forward and what managers that she would like to put on the process. So there's some speculation as to what the reason could be for this. Some say that since they know Trump is going to be acquitted in the Senate, that she's not moving forward for that reason alone. They don't want him to get exonerated. They do not want to give him the talking point heading into his reelection that he has been exonerated in the Senate. Others say she's trying to get leverage for a fair trial. Regardless, though, we're stuck at a standoff right now. You have the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell waiting to get articles sent to him in the Senate so that he can move forward on this. You have Nancy Pelosi giving little direction as to when, if ever, the Senate is going to receive them. So I'm going to play you one more clip of Mitch McConnell on this, and this is, he's discussing being ready to get the articles of impeachment.
By the Speaker's own standards, the standards she set, she's failed the country. The case is not compelling, not overwhelming, and as a result, not bipartisan. The failure was made clear to everyone earlier this week when Senator Schumer began searching for ways the Senate could step out of our proper role and try to fix the House Democrats' failures for them. And it was made even more clear last night when Speaker Pelosi suggested that House Democrats may be too afraid to even transmit their shoddy work product to the Senate. Mr. President, it looks like the prosecutors are getting cold feet in front of the entire country and second-guessing whether they even want to go to trial. They said impeachment was so urgent that it could not even wait for due process, but now they're content to sit on their hands. This is really comical. Democrats' own actions concede that their allegations are unproven. The articles aren't just unproven, they're also constitutionally incoherent. Incoherent. Frankly, if either of these articles is blessed by the Senate, we could easily see the impeachment of every future president of either party. Let me say that again. If the Senate blesses this historically low bar, we will invite the impeachment of every future president.
So the Constitution says that it shall be the sole power of the House to impeach and the sole power of the Senate to hold the trial. So why is Nancy Pelosi trying to delay sending these articles to the Senate? And if you listen to the House when they were trying to make their case on impeachment, President Trump was a clear and present danger, right? I mean, he was to be removed immediately because he was such a danger. Truly, that's what they said. They made the case that they couldn't wait any longer. They couldn't wait for the courts. They couldn't wait for anything because he was such a danger. They had to move forward with this immediately, which is why it was the quickest impeachment in history. It was a rushed process. So holding on to the articles and not getting it over to the Senate right away, it does nothing but weaken the case that they themselves made. It makes no sense. Not to mention it's unprecedented. They are playing games with the Constitution. Trump should have his day in court. You also have the Democratic minority leader in the Senate, Chuck Schumer, stating publicly that he wants this over in the Senate. It's not just that's how it's supposed to work or what the Constitution says. Even Chuck Schumer, the Democratic minority leader, wants it there. He's even trying to control the narrative about what an unfair trial it's going to be once it gets to the Senate. Let's listen to him for a few seconds.
Of the members of the 116th Senate have been denied the opportunity to legislate by Leader McConnell. We aren't even allowed to debate the issues that would impact the American people. Health care, infrastructure, prescription drugs. We could have spent the year debating these issues. We weren't doing impeachment. Leader McConnell has chosen not to focus on these issues and to put none of these bills on the floor. And as he reminds us often, He alone decides what goes on the floor. Leader McConnell claimed that the House did not afford the president due process. The leader knows well that President Trump refused to participate in the process, despite invitation, and blocked witnesses and documents from Congress in unprecedented fashion. Leader McConnell claimed that the House ran, quote, the most rushed, least thorough, and most unfair impeachment inquiry in modern history. I know that that's the Republican talking point, but here's the reality. Leader McConnell is plotting the most rushed, least thorough, and most unfair impeachment trial in modern history. His plan to prevent House managers from calling witnesses to prove their case is a dramatic break from precedent. We heard a lot about precedent from the leader.
So I'm with you, Chuck. I would love to see Nancy Pelosi send this to the Senate, too. I'd love to put this behind us and move on to more important work. I want to end the impeachment talk today with what the Republican Congressman Doug Collins had to say on the House floor right before the vote, which drew a major applause in the House. The reason that I'm playing this for you is because I truly believe that at the end of his point, he gets to the heart of why Americans are not paying attention to this impeachment. They're not paying attention. The polls show this time and time again. So let's listen to Doug Collins.
But you know something? This majority leader also just said, wherever law ends, tyranny begins. But I will say this, in this House, wherever the rules are disregarded, chaos and mob rule actually begin, and the majority has taken that to a new level. It has been said today, where is bravery? I'll tell you where bravery is found and courage is found. It's found in this minority who has lived through the last year of nothing but rules being broken, people being put down, questions not being answered, and this majority saying, be damned with anything else, we're going to impeach and do whatever we want to do. Why? Because we won an election. I guarantee you, one day you'll be back in the minority, and it ain't going to be that fun. Because when you look at it, when you actually trash the rules of this House, you ought to really look at what did you gain at the end by trashing the institution you claim to love. That's the things we found out so far. But you know, they're really careful of saying, oh, you want to deal in process and process. As I said last night in the Rules Committee, where they didn't want to listen, I'll win on process and I will win on facts because we have the truth on our side. Let me remind you that here's what the process actually says. There was no pressure. Look at the call. President Zelensky, President Trump, no pressure. There was no conditionality. There was nothing done to get the aid, and the aid actually came. There were 5 meetings. But when you look at it right now, none of which matter, because right now the dark cloud is descending upon this House. And I am fearful, Madam Speaker. When I look out in that abyss, I don't know what I see, but I tell you what I do see. I see coming up a president who will put his head down even through this sham impeachment, and he will do his job. He will put the American people first. He will tell them that I care about you. He will still put the economy first, and he will make sure this country stands strong. That's what I see in this abyss. That's where we're going.
President Trump is continuing to work. We can always say what we don't like about this president. We can always say that he talks too much. There are many examples to point to as far as this goes. And as I tell my friends who are still hesitant to support this president, I say, look at his policies, look at what he's doing, not what he's saying. And with that, I think you'll find you align with him more than you might think. That's it for me today. I hope you all have a wonderful Christmas, and I'll be back same time next week.
This has been the Beth Cahill Show. If you have any feedback for Beth or would like to suggest a future topic or guest for the show, email beth@thebethcahillshow.com. That's Beth at the Beth Cahill, spelled Cahill show.com. Tune in again next Saturday morning at 9 for more of the Beth Cahill Show, right here on AM 1590. The Answer.